July 27th, 2017. This will be a closer look at soils, part 3. Want to discuss a little bit more about mulches and a little bit more about a few of the more specific parts of the soil that we discussed in the first video. 3 specific parts I want to talk about are the drillosphere and the detritosphere and the rhizosphere. So I'll review real quick for those of you who didn't catch the first video. If you didn't catch it, you should probably go back and check it out. Might learn some good information there if you're not familiar already. Anyway, the detritosphere is at the top of the soil where all the decay is happening. And so it normally, like, well, here, we'll start here. Here where I've tilled and planted cabbage, there's no detritosphere left on this soil. And you can see there's bits and pieces of material here, but they're not decaying. And a lot of the crumb of the soil is actually sitting right on top. This is not natural. Eventually I'll be going to all no-till systems, but I'm working on putting the equipment together to do that. Because it does take a lot more weight and pressure and just the right type of equipment to cut down through a heavy sod like this and plant seeds at the appropriate depths. But anyway, okay, so that's an example of where we've killed the detritosphere right off the top. There isn't any there. It'll come back over time, of course, but right now there isn't any. Here in the grass, I'll just peel this grass aside a bit, and actually in here you can see that there is a detritosphere, and you can see that there's organic matter, grass debris, and here's a piece of a rosebush stalk, and all sorts of other stuff. And you can see as I kind of finger down into the detritosphere that now we're getting down into the actual soil, and that'd be the agrosphere if the soil's in good health, and it is, and there is an agrosphere and porosphere in there. So now let's talk about why we mulch and what that does. Well, there's many reasons why we mulch. Maybe we should just cover those quick. The basic reasons why we mulch are: we protect the soil from direct exposure to sunlight, which protects the microbes in the soil, which basically protects our interface between our plants and the minerals and nutrition that are in the soil. Those guys basically are the go-between. They're the translator between the soil and the plant. And you can basically look at it like the soil is the digestive tract of the plant. The microbes in the soil break down the mineral nutrition in there, and they make that available to the plants in a form they can take up. The plants take it up, they use sunlight, and they use those minerals to build their plant cell structure, and from the sunlight they generate, they also produce sugars. In fact, everything they do is based on sugar production, and some of those sugars they put back in the soil along with other plant compounds, and those sugars and other plant compounds that go back into the soil from the plant are called exudates. Those exudates feed the microbial communities in the soil, excuse me, and consequently release more mineral nutrition. And this cycle continues, and so that's how plants really work in nature with soil. So now, why do we put mulch down? We mulch to protect the soil from UV, to preserve that microbial community, to hold moisture in, to prevent weeds from coming up, and to supply nutrition for the future. So let's take a look at what mulch is. Over here you see soil that isn't mulched. We looked at a close-up sample of what that looked like. Now let's go over here. This has been covered in mulch since early spring. I shouldn't even say early spring. It really got the leaves, I think, about mid-May. It might have even been early June. So for a few months now, but not a long period of time. Like, this hasn't been mulched for years. This has been mulched for months, just a couple months. So let's go take a look. We'll pick a random spot here, and we'll just peel this soil back, and I think you'll be amazed at what we find underneath here as far as activity. All right, right off the bat, we see a lot of worm castings sitting on top of the soil. And you'll notice that our detritus sphere is actually considerably thicker here. As I finger through this, you can see there's detritus sphere in the top, like 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Oh, and look at that. Yeah, see? We got a centipede moving through. Now, I personally don't know exactly what they do in this system, but I can tell you they're a critical part of the system. And actually, I've seen these littler guys like this before, and I always see them around rotting wood and that sort of thing. So my guess is they probably are breaking down the lignins and the fibers and the more cellulose and fibrous type content that's in the mulch in here. Anyway, we see lots and lots of earthworm castings. That's good. We also see earthworm holes as we look around. Lots of drill holes. So we got drillosphere, and we've got agrosphere. You can see these little balls. So we got like agrosphere integrated with detritosphere almost, because of the earthworms and because of the protection of the soil. All right, and you notice how this mulch is breaking down. The straw was the first layer down, and the leaves were the second layer down. So the straw is starting to break down, and the earthworms are working it. And I will need to actually increase the amount of mulch on this right now. You can see this was about 6 inches deep a couple months ago, and we're down to, oh boy, maybe 1.5 inches or so already. So that tells you how active the soil community is here. Let's, I did a pull-up before and I came across the worms, so I just want to find some worms here quick. See if I can scratch a few guys up, surprise them. Oh man, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's the one thing I find under heavy mulch beds like this. They're not like the earthworms like you normally find. There's another one. They're not the earthworms like you normally find in the soil. These guys are really vigorous, really fast, and they usually squirm like crazy when you find them. There's another video on here from my parents' garden of when we did some mulching and the earthworms we had in there. But anyway, now that I've peeled that section back, you can see those earthworms are just running off on me. They're just disappearing. They feel me coming and run off into the mulch in the ground. But you can see how much detritosphere is actually here. So so that's what we're doing. We're preserving that microbial community, including the earthworms and the centipedes and all those pieces, and bacteria and fungi and nematodes, and it just goes on and on and on. And they're doing all the work. They're turning all the mulch into food for plants. And each one of these little guys like earthworms and millipedes and those, as they consume this stuff, they're adding bacterial communities that are inside them. And so you can see the scale that it goes down to is right down to microscopic, and so each piece of the system has multiple pieces of the system inside of itself, or within that structure. I don't know, I guess I've kind of rambled on a bit here, but I really just wanted to show what mulch really does and how well it really works. And you can see how nice and moist that soil is. And of course, we've had a lot of rain this year, but I can tell you that even in a dry year, it would be the same way. And I guess we'll just call it good on this video for now, and I'll let you have a look at these indigo cherry tomatoes that we're growing this year. These are pretty cool. They're not quite ripe yet, but they're getting there, and looking forward to trying some of those. Anyway, I hope you've learned something more about soils and mulches. Just to recap quick, by adding mulch, we're extending the detritosphere tremendously, and we're providing a home for the microbial communities and the worms and all the other little pieces, parts in there. And so basically in extending the detritosphere, we're building all the other parts of the soil, and we're making the drillosphere, in other words, the amount of worms in there, much higher, and that actually provides better nutrition and more porous soil and better air exchange, better water exchange, bacterial, microbial, fungal communities, all those pieces integrated together working. And so what it ultimately does is enhance the rhizosphere, or the root system of the plant. So that's why Mulches tomatoes here. I think I discussed in one of the last videos how these are under heavy old tree spruce wood chips. Ooh, we got a tomato that's almost ripe. Looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. And so anyway, so you'll notice they're much lighter green, not nearly as healthy as the stuff that was mulched with, say, leaves. These are under the same nutritional program. They've had foliar feeds and drenches of complete trace mineral and hormonal nutrition, all equilateral across the board. Same amount of nutrition for everything, and so you can see there's a distinct difference between the wood chip mulch and the leaf mulch. So a lot of times I just want to address a question that I get sometimes. People talk about being worried about too much acidic buildup from putting leaves down as mulch, and I don't experience that ever. I've never had a problem with that. The only thing I've ever gotten is earthworms and darker soil and happier, healthier plants. And I want to point out that, you know, a little acidification is good. You know, you need some sulfur and you need some organic acids in your soil to break down the mineral, the rock mineral content that's there. That's how you access that nutrition. Those acids are part of that cycle. So no, I don't ever worry about putting down an acid leaf mulch. Especially like a deciduous. This is all deciduous leaves. This is mostly maple leaves, this one. One year I had access to oak leaf, and I had a mass amount of it, and actually that was one of the best mulches I ever used. That really accelerated growth tremendously, and it cooked down very quickly also. And I had fantastic earthworms under that. So I would prefer an oak leaf mulch over a maple leaf mulch, I think. If I had my druthers. But anyway, so peppers and tomatoes are all doing really well. You can see I've started trellising things up here. I have a box of tomato clips around somewhere from 2 years ago, and I don't know where they went. So my friend Steve gave me his last little bag of them that he had set aside, and I'm still looking for my tomato clips. I'll probably end up having to order some because I don't know where they went. So probably should keep track of where things are. Anyway, growing really well. Things are really healthy. We got clusters of tomatoes coming on. We got clusters of flowers coming on, and you know, no sign of anything slowing down anytime soon. So pretty excited about that. Just take you down a couple of these other rows quick, or at least a part of the row. And you can see I came through and did some pruning here the other night. Apparently I didn't get everything off of the plants. I had to let enough light into the peppers and keep things kind of lassoed down. And anyway, we have peppers coming on, I should point out. That's a nice sized pepper right there. There's another one. We're rocking it this season. Things are growing great. It's been a little rainy the last week or so, but I think I'd rather that than a drought like last year. Anyway, things are growing great, and I'll let you have a shot of this apple tree that I've been working under nutrition for a few years now. You can see those apples are starting to fill up, and some of them are starting to throw a little bit of a ripeness color to them. Pretty excited about that. I will probably give this another foliar feed in the next couple days. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network.